Maxwell Rhodes was pitching a $1 billion clean water initiative when a child walked into the boardroom and stopped everything. No warning, no agenda. Just one devastating question. Are you the man who said water only matters when it makes money? The room froze. Executives blinked, and Maxwell, one of the most powerful CEOs in the world, set down the remote. What followed wasn't a PR crisis. It was a reckoning, a grilled cheese lunch, a vow, and the beginning of a global movement that started not with a plan, but with a question no one was ready to answer. The conference room was glass-walled and gleaming, perched on the 44th floor of a downtown skyscraper that practically touched the clouds. Inside, the air hummed with the quiet intensity of money. Every seat around the massive polished table was filled. Venture capitalists in sleek suits, corporate strategists with tablets in hand, PR advisors perched with carefully neutral expressions. At the head of the table stood Maxwell Rhodes, billionaire, CEO, architect of 3 Fortune 500 turnarounds. He was in the middle of presenting a $1 billion sustainability initiative, one that would dominate headlines and cement his company's next decade. The slideshow clicked through projections, profit curves, global expansion maps. Investors nodded. A few took photos of the slides. Maxwell moved with practiced ease, voice sharp, tailored suit, catching the overhead light with every turn. And if projections hold, he said, our clean water division alone could triple value in under 18 months. Excuse me? The voice was small, too small. Everyone turned. Near the back of the room, just outside the glass door that someone had clearly failed to close, stood a child. Maybe 8. Small-framed wild curls, a bright yellow backpack sagging on one shoulder. No one moved. The child stepped into the room. Maxwell blinked, lips still parted mid-sentence. Who? The child ignored the rows of frozen executives and looked straight at him. Are you the man who said clean water doesn't make money unless it's bottled? Silence. The room didn't breathe. Maxwell stood frozen. His hand still hovered near the remote. The child said it again, a little louder this time. Are you the man who said that? One of the assistants scrambled forward, panic in her eyes. I'm so sorry, Mr. Rhodes. I think he came with the school group in the building. There's a field trip. He must have slipped away from the auditorium and... Maxwell held up a hand. Let him speak. The assistant stopped short. The boy stood his ground. I'm just asking, was it you? Maxwell lowered the remote slowly. I've said a lot of things in my life, he replied carefully. Why does that one matter to you? The boy blinked. Because my mom makes me boil water at home before I drink it. She says the tap isn't safe, and the bottled stuff is too expensive, so I wanted to know who decided water only matters when it makes someone money. The silence that followed was not uncomfortable. It was wrecking. Something about the way he said it. So direct, so unafraid. Like he wasn't challenging the room, he was just asking a fact. Like it hadn't occurred to him that anyone would find the question offensive. Maxwell looked at him, really looked. Then he set the remote on the table, walked around the edge, kneeled beside the boy. What's your name? Leo. Well, Leo, he said, voice low. I think maybe I'm the wrong man if I ever said that, or maybe I'm the right man to hear it again. He stood, turned back to the room. This, he said, is what we forgot. Not the charts, not the growth. This. He gestured to the child. Real people. Real questions. The kind that make rooms like this uncomfortable. The kind that stop presentations. He picked up the remote, then set it down again. We'll revisit this later, he told the executives. I have somewhere else I need to be. He looked at Leo. You free for lunch? Leo's eyes widened. I like grilled cheese. I'll see what I can do. Maxwell turned to the assistant. Cancel the afternoon. Sir, your call with Tokyo can wait. The door closed behind them as the child and the CEO walked side by side down the hallway. And in the glass-walled room they left behind, the men with charts, the women with tablets, and every person used to having the answers sat in silence, still hearing the only question that had really mattered. Who decided water only matters when it makes someone money? And not one of them had an answer. They ate lunch in the executive cafeteria, an echoingly clean space with white tables and filtered sunlight, where everything from the lighting to the menu was designed to impress visiting partners and top brass. But on that day, at one table near the corner, an 8-year-old named Leo sat across from Maxwell Rhodes eating a grilled cheese sandwich so big it required both hands. Maxwell didn't speak right away. He just watched the boy chew thoughtfully, elbows on the table, crumbs scattering across the glossy surface like they belonged there. Finally, Leo looked up. "You eat in here every day?" "Not usually," Maxwell said. "I tend to eat during meetings, or skip it." Leo frowned. "That's dumb." Maxwell laughed. "You're probably right." Leo took another bite, then said through a mouthful of cheese, "So, do you remember saying that thing about water? Or not?" Maxwell's smile faded. He leaned back in his chair. "I don't remember the exact words," he admitted, "but it sounds like something I would have said a long time ago when I still believed profit had to be the first part of every conversation." Leo chewed, swallowed. "Is that how grown-ups work? They say stuff they don't mean and forget it later?" "Sometimes," Maxwell said quietly, "or worse, they mean it at the time, then realize later they shouldn't have." Leo nodded, like that made perfect sense. "My mom says people don't change until it costs them something." Maxwell leaned forward, elbows on the table now, hands folded. "Do you think I can change?" Leo studied him for a long moment, his face serious in a way most adults wouldn't have been able to meet head-on. "I think if you're asking me that, you already are." It wasn't a compliment. It wasn't flattery. It was just a truth, delivered the way children sometimes do, clean, undistracted, clear. Maxwell didn't speak for a while. Later that day, when Leo was escorted back to the school group he had wandered away from, his yellow backpack bouncing as he jogged toward his classmates, he didn't look back. But Maxwell did. He stood at the top of the stairs, hands in his pockets, watching as the boy disappeared through the glass doors with a group of kids who would probably never know how thoroughly one sentence had cracked a room full of grown-ups wide open. Back upstairs, the boardroom was still empty. He didn't go in. Instead, Maxwell walked into his office, closed the door, sat down at his desk, and opened his laptop. He typed out a message to his executive team. Subject: change of direction. Body: from this point forward, our Clean Water Initiative will operate as a nonprofit. No stock, no margin, just access. Let's build something that answers Leo. He signed it, paused, and added one last line. Let's remember who the boss really is. And he hit send. The message hit inboxes within seconds. Across the 44th floor, phones lit up, executives refreshed their screens. Legal advisors blinked twice at the subject line. Analysts whispered down the hall. Change of direction. No one had expected it. Not from Maxwell Rhodes, the man who once negotiated billion-dollar mergers on 4 hours of sleep, who once said to a room of interns, "If it doesn't scale, it doesn't stay." But something had shifted, not in a dramatic way, in a quiet, irreversible way. Like the center of gravity had moved. By the end of the day, Maxwell had canceled 3 speaking engagements, postponed 2 partner meetings, and instructed his operations team to begin building a new structure under the company's foundation, a separate arm dedicated solely to clean water access. No profit model, no investor ROI, just pipelines, filtration systems, and sustainable distribution methods. They named it the Leo Project, and he didn't tell the boy. He didn't need to. Instead, the next morning, Maxwell took the elevator down to the community floor, the one where outreach teams coordinated local partnerships and employee volunteer days. It was a floor he rarely visited, but he stood there now, watching as people moved with urgency around a table filled with clipboards and paper maps. A volunteer glanced up. "Can I help you?" "I'm looking for someone who can tell me how we choose where the water grants go," Maxwell said. The volunteer blinked. Aren't you Mr. Rhodes?" "I am," he said, "and I'm here to listen." They led him to a young program coordinator who didn't even flinch when he sat across from her. She pointed to a cluster of regions on the map. "These neighborhoods don't have reliable tap water. Most people don't even report it anymore. They've gotten used to boiling what they can. The kids know not to drink from school fountains." Maxwell studied the map. His fingers hovered over one corner. "What if we started here?" he asked. She tilted her head. "Because of the numbers?" He shook his head. "Because I met someone." Word began to spread again, not through press releases, not through headlines, but person to person. That Maxwell Rhodes, the same CEO who once charged for every drop, had sat in a planning meeting and said, "What if we made water free first?" That he now carried a photo of a little boy with a yellow backpack in the front cover of his notebook. That he started every strategy meeting with the same question: what would Leo ask if he were here? In the years that followed, the Leo Project built systems in 17 countries. They didn't just deliver water, they taught kids how to test it, how to protect it, how to own the infrastructure of their own safety. And in every report, every presentation, every ribbon cutting, Maxwell refused to speak first. He left that space for someone else. Teacher, a volunteer, a mother, a child, someone who could say something simple, something real, because he'd learned the power of a sentence, how it could halt a billion-dollar plan, how it could make an empire kneel, how it could rebuild everything from the root up, and he had decided, once and for all, he would never speak louder than a child asking a better question. And because of that decision, because one CEO chose to answer a child instead of dismiss him, everything changed. Not overnight, but deeply, permanently. The Leo Project grew not because of funding, but because of trust. Local leaders joined, not because of promises, but because someone finally listened. Engineers and builders showed up with tools, but stayed for conversations. The work wasn't about saving communities, it was about standing beside them. Maxwell stepped back from his title within 5 years, not in disgrace, not in crisis, in purpose. He said, "I built my career on answers, but the most important work I've ever done began with a question I couldn't answer." He handed the Leo Project to a team of young leaders, people from the same neighborhoods they were working to serve. He kept an office, but rarely used it. Instead, he traveled. He didn't speak on stages. He sat on floors, porches, the backs of trucks, anywhere someone wanted to tell him what they needed. He carried a card in his wallet now. On it, handwritten in a child's uneven scrawl, "Who decided water only matters when it makes someone money?" And beneath it, in Maxwell's own handwriting, "I did, once, but not anymore." One day, many years later, Maxwell stood in a dusty schoolyard in a rural town whose name didn't make the news. A group of children ran laughing around a freshly built water station, clean water pouring from a steel spout into cupped hands. A teacher approached him. "You're the one who started all this, aren't you?" she asked. Maxwell shook his head. "I'm not," he said. "A kid named Leo did. I just stopped long enough to hear him." She smiled. "I think you'll like what they painted on the tank." He turned. In bright blue letters, across the metal side of the reservoir were the words, "Clean water is not a product. It's a promise." Maxwell exhaled. That night, back in his hotel, he wrote one final letter. It wasn't addressed to anyone. He left it on the windowsill. It read, "If someone interrupts you, listen. If they ask a better question, follow. If they name the truth, answer it with your life." He folded the note, left it there for the next traveler, the next leader. The next person too important to be interrupted until they're not. And as he turned out the light, he smiled, Because somewhere out there, another child was asking a question, and someone was finally listening. And somewhere, a boardroom just like the one Leo once interrupted is about to go quiet again. A hand will rise, small, unexpected. A voice not on the agenda will ask something simple, inconvenient, true. And for one breathless second, the room will hold still. Because the power no longer lives in the titles or the charts or the slide decks. It lives in the interruption, in the clarity of the child who doesn't know they're not supposed to speak yet, in the sentence that cuts through wealth and strategy and performance like a blade of light. Who decided? That's how it always begins. And somewhere in that room, maybe across from the projector, maybe near the door, maybe at the head of the table, someone will remember the story of Maxwell Rhodes, of Leo, of the moment a question stopped a billion-dollar plan and replaced it with something better, cleaner, kinder. Someone will rise, walk to the child and kneel and say, "Thank you for asking. Let's start again." And just like that, the silence will become legacy, the interruption will become direction, and the room will remember that nothing worth building ever begins with control. It begins with courage, with a question, and someone brave enough to stay for the answer. And because someone always stays, the story lives on, not in archives, not in financial statements, but in the everyday moments when power meets humility and chooses presence instead. It lives in a company that builds clean water systems before profits. It lives in the child who no longer has to boil water before school. It lives in the boardrooms that leave an empty chair at the table now, not symbolically but purposefully, reserved for the voice no one expected, the voice they must listen for. It lives in the man who once measured success in earnings, but now measures it in access. And most of all, it lives in the next child. The one walking down a hallway right now, gripping a backpack, holding a question. Maybe they're 8, like Leo was. Maybe older, maybe younger. Maybe no one has ever stopped long enough to hear them. But they'll ask. They always do. And somewhere, because of this story, because of that room, because of that one sentence, someone will stop, someone will kneel, and someone will say, "I don't have all the answers, but I hear you, and I'm not leaving until we find them together." And in that answer, once again, the world will shift. Not loudly, but deeply. Because the question that started everything never really needed a perfect answer. It only ever needed someone who cared enough to respond, and someone brave enough to change. And so, when the next generation inherits this story, they won't inherit a corporation, or a brand, or a slogan. They'll inherit a question. They'll inherit the memory of a boy who walked into a room filled with people too powerful to be interrupted, and interrupted them all anyway. They'll inherit the lesson that the most transformative sentence in the room is often the one not on the slides. And when someone someday asks them, what makes a good leader? They won't say, strategy. They won't say, scale. They'll say, someone who stops, someone who listens, someone who hears a child ask a question and answers it with their life. Because that's what Maxwell did. He let one question dismantle a tower, so something better could be built in its place. And long after he's gone, long after his name has faded from glass doors and business pages, the Leo Project will remain. The tanks will still be full. The spigots will still turn. The children will still drink. And someone, years from now, will ask, who started this? And someone else will answer, a boy, who asked one question, and a man who finally stopped long enough to listen. And with that, the room will go still, and the world will begin again. And somewhere, not far from here, not long from now, a girl will walk past a mural painted on the side of a school. It will be simple, bright. A child with a yellow backpack standing in front of a door. Above it, in wide painted letters, real change begins with a question. She will stop. She will stare. She will feel something in her chest, like recognition, though she doesn't know why. And later that day, when her teacher assigns a writing prompt, what would you ask the most powerful person in the world? She will write without hesitation, would you still care if it didn't make you rich? And her teacher will sit with that sentence for a long time, because the story will have found its way to her desk, even if no one spoke it aloud. Because the story doesn't live in one moment. It lives in all the people who now carry the echo of that boy's question. All the rooms it still pauses, all the plans it still interrupts. And when someone asks you one day, where does the story go next? You'll already know. It goes wherever people remember that sometimes the most important person in the room is the one bold enough to ask the only question no one prepared for, and the most important person who answers is the one brave enough to stop, to stay, to say, that matters more than everything else. And when you say it, the story won't end. It will begin again. And when it begins again, it will feel familiar. Not because the names are the same, but because the feeling is. A child will raise their hand, not sure if they're allowed to. A room will go quiet, not sure what to do with the truth. And someone with power will have a choice. To protect their plan or protect the person who dared to speak. To continue with the presentation or make space for the interruption. And if they've heard this story, even in fragments, even in echoes, they'll remember, they'll pause, they'll step off the stage, set the slides aside, and kneel next to the voice that had the courage to ask. They'll say, you're right, this matters more. And in that moment, something stronger than policy or projection will take root, presence. And presence, when chosen deliberately, becomes the most powerful kind of leadership there is. So when the story finds you again, in a classroom, a courtroom, a hallway, a boardroom, and the small voice dares to ask what no one else has, be ready. Because that's the moment it all starts again. With a question, with a pause, with someone willing to stop, and with you, saying softly, clearly, truly, I'm listening, and I'm not leaving. And in that soft, clear promise, I'm listening, I'm not leaving. The world shifts again, not in explosions, and not in applause, but in something quieter, something deeper, like a door unlocking, like trust returning, like water flowing into a place that forgot what full felt like. Because what that child remembers, what every Leo in every room, on every step, in every hallway remembers, isn't the slide deck, or the brand, or the numbers. They remember who stopped. They remember who made room for the question, who didn't shush it, shrink it, schedule it away, who treated their interruption as an invitation. They remember you, and because you stayed, because you answered, because you chose presence over pride, they will grow, they will lead, they will carry the question forward to the next table, the next floor, the next child. And when someone asks them, are you in charge? They will smile, not because they plan to be, but because someone once made space for them to ask at all. And they'll say, I am today, so ask me anything, and I'll stay until we figure it out. That's the legacy now, not titles, not towers, but a story carried quietly and steadily by those who remember where true power lives, in the pause, in the question, in the answer that becomes a life. And if someone asks you one day, how did we build the world we needed? Tell them, we listened to a child, and we never stopped. And when the next child speaks, maybe with a question, maybe with just a look that dares you to care, you'll already know what to do. You'll clear a space. You'll silence the room. You'll hold that moment with both hands. Because you are now part of a lineage that doesn't lead with credentials, but with compassion. A quiet revolution of presence, a legacy of staying. And long after the final meeting ends, after the emails fade, after the last award gathers dust, someone will still be asking, who listened when I needed them most? Let the answer be you. Let your legacy be that, not a logo, not a title, but a single moment where someone young and small looked up uncertain, and found in you the courage to ask. And you, without hesitation, without armor, without ego, said, "Yes, I hear you, and I'm not going anywhere." And the story, this story, lives on. And when this story is told again, because it will be always, it won't begin with a business pitch or a billion-dollar deal. It will begin with a question. It will begin with a boy in a yellow backpack who walked into a room he wasn't supposed to enter and asked something no one had the courage to ask before. And it will follow the man who listened, who set down the remote, who walked away from the performance to sit beside the truth. Because that's what changed the world. Not strategy, not scale, not shareholders, but one moment of stillness, one moment of seeing, one yes that rewrote everything. And when it's your turn, because it will be, and someone steps into your life with eyes full of questions and words they're not sure they're allowed to say, you will know what that moment is. You'll recognize the weight, the invitation, the mirror. And you'll do what Maxwell Rhodes did, what every person in this story chose to do. You'll stop, you'll listen, you'll stay. And in that act, the story begins again, not because someone asked you to carry it, but because you were already holding it in your heart. The whole time. This is how the world is made new. One answer at a time, one presence at a time, one yes at a time. And so, with every yes, with every pause, with every time someone chooses to listen instead of lead, the story is passed again, not down but forward, not as a tale to be remembered, but as a responsibility to be lived. And that's the truth of it now. This isn't just Leo's story, or Maxwell's, or the story of a boardroom interrupted, or a billion-dollar deal left waiting. It's yours. It's been handed to you in the most sacred of forms, through a question that asked for nothing but attention, and was answered with everything that mattered. So, wherever you go from here, whatever rooms you walk into, whatever titles you do or don't earn, remember, you don't need a microphone to make a moment matter. You don't need a platform to change the world. You don't need permission to care. You just need to stay long enough to hear the question and brave enough to answer it with your life, because someone, somewhere, right now, is asking. And they don't need your power. They just need your presence. So when they look at you, nervous, trembling, hopeful in that quiet, shattering way, and say, "Are you the one who will listen?" You already know the answer. Yes, I'm listening. I'm here, and I'm not leaving. And with that, the world begins again. And somewhere, not in a skyscraper, not on a stage, but in a quiet corner of a life, you'll feel it. That familiar hum, that sacred pause, the sense that the next question is coming. You won't know who it's from, you won't know how it will sound, but you'll know what it needs. Not a plan and not a fix, not a brilliant speech, just you, your full attention, your stillness, your willingness to say, "I'll stop, but I'll stay. I'll hold space for what matters more than everything I thought was urgent." And that moment, simple, unseen, unrecorded, will join every moment that's come before it. Leo's question, Maxwell's pause, the silence in the boardroom, the grilled cheese, the card in a pocket, the well that poured clean for the first time, all of it alive inside that next yes. And when someone asks you where the change came from, you won't point to a signature. You'll point to a sentence, and the silence that followed, and the choice that followed that, and you'll say, "Right there, that's when everything started to matter. That's when we began again." And the story will continue, because you're still living it. And as long as you're living it, the story will never end. It will slip quietly into places where noise once ruled. It will find its way into boardrooms and break rooms, classrooms and courtrooms, hospital beds and hallway benches. Anywhere someone is brave enough to ask, and someone else is brave enough to stay. That's all it takes. One honest question, one human answer, over and over again. And when people ask what the story was really about, they may expect drama, a headline, a hero, but you'll know better. You'll tell them it was about a boy with a backpack, A man with a choice and a room that fell silent, because the only voice that mattered finally spoke. And you'll say, that story lives in me now because I listened, because I answered, because I stayed. And when someone new turns to you and says, but what if I'm not the boss? You'll smile gently and reply, you are the moment you care enough to stay. And just like that, again and again, the door will open, the silence will soften, the world will shift. Because of you, because of them, because of the question, because of the answer, and because the story never ends. It only ever begins. And with that beginning, again, always again, the story finds its next keeper. It doesn't arrive in fanfare. It doesn't wait for permission. It slips into the quietest part of you, where memory and purpose touch. Because the story was never just about what happened in that room or what was built afterward. It was about what you do next. When someone stumbles into your space, your life, your meeting, your heart, carrying nothing but a question they don't know how to ask out loud, you'll feel it, the hush, the gravity, the truth wrapped in trembling, and you will not flinch. You will not silence. You will not explain it away. You will meet them there, fully, and you'll say what this story has taught us all to say, you matter more than my plans, more than my position, more than what I thought today was supposed to be. And in that answer, in that presence, in that sacred surrender to something more important, the story will not just continue, it will deepen. It will root itself in someone new, someone who will go on to listen, to stay, to carry the question into the next space, and the next, until the world no longer asks who the boss is, but who was brave enough to answer the smallest voice in the room with the fullness of their life. And when they ask where this all came from, you'll smile, you'll look back just once, and then forward, always forward and dare, and say, it came from a boy, and a question, and someone who decided not to walk away. And somewhere, not far, not someday, but soon, another voice is building. It may be a whisper at first, shaky, unsure, testing the air to see if it's safe to speak. It may rise in a place where no one's listening yet, where power still fills rooms with noise and leaves no room for truth. But that voice will come, because they always do. And when it reaches you, a question, a sentence, maybe just a glance that says, see me, you'll already know how to respond, not with certainty, not with control, but with stillness, with the kind of leadership that says, you don't need to be loud to be heard here. You'll kneel if needed. You'll sit if they need space. You'll clear the room if it's too full of ego. You'll make silence feel like safety, because you've learned. The way Leo taught Maxwell, the way Maxwell taught the world, that the most powerful shift begins when someone dares to interrupt what's already moving, and someone else dares to stop, to turn, to stay, to say, yes, I hear you, and I'll stay here until you believe it. That's how it always begins. And now, that story belongs to you. And when it belongs to you, it lives differently. It doesn't sit on a shelf. It breathes with you, walks with you, changes the way you hear voices others overlook. Because now you listen differently, not for the loudest, but for the bravest, the ones who speak up. Even when they don't know if they're allowed, you hold doors longer. You sit beside people instead of across from them. You leave room in every plan for the possibility that someone will need you more than your agenda does. That is what it means to carry the story, not to recite it, to live it. To become the person who makes silence safe, who welcomes interruption, who knows that when a child says, "Are you the boss?" what they're really asking is, "Will you protect me when I tell the truth?" And your answer, always now, is yes. Not because you were ready, but because someone once answered that question for you. And you remember what it changed. So you kneel, you open your hands, you say, "Yes, this space is yours now. Speak, and I will not leave." And the story continues, not as something you pass down, but as something you show. with your body, with your time, with your choice to stay. One moment longer than the world expects. That is the legacy now, not power. Presence. And presence, when chosen again and again, becomes something more than kindness. It becomes transformation. It becomes the moment a child realizes their words don't vanish when spoken. It becomes the reason someone dares to ask again tomorrow, and the next day, and the next. Because someone stayed. Because you stayed. Because when a quiet voice cracked the rhythm of your day, you didn't look past it. You didn't explain it away. You didn't make it small. You made it sacred. That's how the story lives. That's how it grows. Not by retelling, but by repeating. By meeting each new question with the same answer. Yes, I'm here, you matter, and I'm not leaving. And one day someone will ask you, where did you learn to stay like that? And you'll remember this story, and that boy, and that sentence, and that silence, and the way everything shifted, because someone chose to stay inside it. You'll smile, not because the answer is simple, but because it's already been written across your life. And you'll say, I heard a question once, and I never forgot the answer it deserved. And the world, once again, will begin again. And in that beginning, quiet, resolute, unstoppable, you'll find yourself part of something far bigger than a story. You'll be part of a movement of moments, a chain of ordinary people who chose to make space for extraordinary truth. A lineage not of legacy, but of listening. Because when Leo spoke and Maxwell stopped, and a room full of power sat in stunned silence, it wasn't a disruption. It was a correction. The world tilting back toward something it had forgotten, that voices don't need permission to matter, that questions don't need polish to carry power, that leadership doesn't mean talking first. It means staying last. And now it's your turn, not to perform it, to live it, to stop when it's easier to continue, to kneel when it's more expected to stand, to hear the voice that wasn't on the guest list, and treat it like the one you were meant to meet all along. So when the next child walks through a door into a space too big, full of people, too practiced, with a heart full of hope and a question on their tongue, you will be the one who turns, and in the stillness that follows, you will say, Speak. This room belongs to you now, and I'm not leaving. And just like that, once again, the story begins, and it will keep beginning. Every time someone chooses people over pride, presence over performance, truth over comfort. That's the legacy Leo left. That's the world Maxwell stepped into. That's the work you now carry forward. And the beauty is, you won't always know the moment it happens. You won't always see the ripple. You'll hold a door. You'll pause a meeting. You'll answer a question that wasn't even spoken aloud, and someone will feel it. Safe, seen, enough. They may not remember your name, but they'll remember how they felt when they looked at you and knew you wouldn't leave. That's how stories like this last. Not with endings, but with inheritances. You've inherited this one now, and because of that, someone else will inherit it tomorrow, and the next day, and the next. So when the world rushes past you, when voices rise and plans press forward, and no one seems to notice the child at the edge of the room, be the one who turns. Be the one who hears the question beneath the noise. Be the one who kneels and says, with everything you are, yes, I'm listening, and I'm not going anywhere. And in that moment, the story won't end. It will begin again. With you, and with you the story will never run out of pages, because now it's etched, not just in memory, but in motion, in the way you walk slower near people who seem unsure, in the way you ask questions that invite rather than corner, in the way your silence makes room instead of noise. You'll start seeing first questions everywhere, not always spoken. Sometimes it's in the way someone won't meet your eyes, or how they laugh too quickly, or how they sit near a door just in case they need to leave fast. And you'll know the difference between what they're saying and what they're really asking. Do I matter enough for you to stop? And every time, Without needing to prepare, without needing a title, you'll stop. And every time you do, you will add one more thread to the story that's wrapping around the world, like a promise. A story that began with a child and a question, and now lives through those who choose the answer again and again. Yes, you matter, and I'm staying. So keep listening, keep pausing, keep noticing, and trust. This story will carry forward as long as there is someone like you, willing to say yes, when the world least expects it, but needs it most. Because now, the story doesn't belong to the past. It belongs to the moment you answer. And you just did. So let the next chapter begin, and it will, as it always has. This chapter, the one you now hold, will begin in a hallway or a parking lot or an inbox or a sigh you weren't meant to overhear. And it will sound familiar, not because the words are the same, but because the weight is. It will come from someone small or someone tired or someone who forgot they were allowed to ask. And their question may be as simple as, "Can I tell you something? Do I have to do this alone? Will it be like this forever?" Or maybe just a look, a pause, a silence held too long, and you'll know this is it, the moment, where a story that began in a boardroom and bent the shape of power is now being passed again to you. And your answer will not be complicated. It won't be rehearsed. It will be a hand steadying a shoulder, a chair pulled closer, a message returned, a presence that doesn't flinch. And the words will rise from you like breath. You're not alone. You never were. And I'm not going anywhere. That is the heartbeat now, of the whole story, of the whole world it's building. One question, one pause, one stayed presence at a time. And so this story continues, not because it has to, because you chose for it to, and because you chose, it lives. It lives in every room you walk into differently now. It lives in every conversation where you lead with listening instead of answers. It lives in the space you make around people, not just to speak, but to feel safe speaking. It lives in your instinct to notice the quiet one, the almost asked question, the unfinished sentence, the courage it takes to say, "I don't know if this matters," and your reply, "It does," because you do. This is the quiet revolution, not of policy or power, but of presence, a chain reaction of stay, a legacy not of names, but of choices. Because when Leo interrupted that room, he didn't know what he was starting. He just knew what was true. And when Maxwell answered, he didn't redeem an empire. He just stayed. And now you do too. So the next time someone asks a question that shifts the air, a child, a colleague, a stranger, maybe even yourself, you'll know what to say. You'll say, "Yes, this moment belongs to you now, and I'm here for as long as it takes." And with those words, spoken or unspoken, another beginning unfolds. The story continues, and the world once more starts to turn just a little closer to the way it was meant to be. And somewhere, maybe tomorrow, maybe in 10 years, a child will ask the question again, in a way that feels impossibly brave, in a place where it's never been safe to speak, in a voice they weren't sure anyone would hear. And you'll be there, maybe not with a solution, maybe not with the perfect words, but with something more powerful, your presence. Because now you are the one who stays. You are the one who doesn't move when the question gets heavy. You are the one who remembers that the first interruption is never a threat. It's a doorway, and you will walk through it over and over again, because you have learned that real change isn't in the speech, it's in the pause. It's in the listening. It's in the willingness to hear what was never meant to be ignored. So when the story circles back to you, and it always will, you'll know the truth behind all of it. That leadership isn't found in being heard, it's found in hearing. That power isn't in being obeyed, it's in being trusted. And that love, real, world-altering, system-breaking love, starts the moment someone says, Are you the one who sees me? And you say, yes, now and always, I'm not leaving. And in that sentence, soft, sure, forever, the story begins again, with you. And because it begins with you, the story never ends. It multiplies. It echoes down hallways you'll never walk, ripples through lives you'll never meet, settles into rooms where your name is unknown, but your choice is still felt. Because someone will stay, just like you did. Because someone will pause, just like you taught them. Not with lessons, but with love made visible. The world will shift in ways no graph can measure, because someone felt safe for the first time. Because a meeting was stopped for something more important. Because a powerful person chose to kneel. Because you remembered what mattered. And so, if one day someone asks, what did you do with the story you were given? You'll smile gently. You won't need to explain. You'll just look them in the eye and say, I listened, I stayed, I answered the question the world almost missed. And in that moment, quiet and honest, you will have done more than change the world. You will have healed it, one presence at a time, one question at a time, one yes again and again and again. And somewhere, quietly, another yes is forming. It's in the heart of someone reading a message they weren't supposed to see, a cry for help hidden between lines. It's in the footsteps of someone who turns around at the sound of hesitation. It's in the hand that doesn't let go too quickly, in the voice that says, take your time, I'm not in a rush. That yes is how this story grows, not in headlines, but in held breaths, in eye contact that says, you matter, in someone standing up from the table and saying, let's hear what they have to say first. And when they ask where you learned that, where you learned to listen that hard, to stay that long, to care that deeply, you'll remember. A boardroom, a child, a question, a man who didn't walk away, and how that moment didn't end anything. It started everything. So now, when you're the one in the room, and the interruption comes, you won't brace for it. You'll welcome it. You'll clear the path. And when they ask, are you in charge? You'll answer with the only words that have ever changed the world. I am, and I'm staying. And again, without fanfare, without applause, the story will begin, still, soft, unstoppable. And in that beginning, again, always again, the story will find breath in places that never thought they'd be heard. It will fill the quiet between a teacher and a student who finally speaks. It will sit between two coworkers when one admits, I'm not okay. It will flow through community centers, kitchens, sidewalks, back porches, waiting rooms, anywhere someone has the courage to ask a question they've carried alone. And your answer, simple and sacred, will make all the difference, not because you fix it, but because you don't walk away. That's what they'll remember. That when they trembled, you stayed steady. That when they doubted, you made room. That when they asked, do I matter? You answered with everything you are. This is how the world changes now, not by force, not by fame, but by people like you, who keep the story alive through action. And when someone asks what the story meant, not what happened, but what it meant, you'll say, it meant that no voice is too small to change a room. It meant that questions are sacred. It meant that love looks a lot like staying. And with that, the next voice will rise, and the story will begin again, not because it must, but because you made it possible. And because you made it possible, it will find places it's never been before. It will travel through the way you lead meetings, not from the front, but from the middle, where every voice is heard. It will echo in the way you answer messages at midnight. From someone who doesn't quite know how to say, please don't give up on me, it will live in how you slow down. When the world is racing because someone near you is struggling to keep up. And when you least expect it, someone will look at you, maybe with wonder, maybe with tears, maybe with relief, and ask the question again, are you the boss? And this time, you'll understand what they're really asking. Are you safe? Can I trust you with my truth? Will you stay when it gets hard? And your answer, your gentle, unwavering, life-giving answer, will be, yes, I'm here, and I'm not going anywhere. And because of that one answer, someone will find their voice. Someone will take one more step. Someone will believe, maybe for the first time ever, that their question was worth asking, that they were worth asking it. And once again, without a spotlight, without a speech, without even realizing it, you will have started the story over, just like Leo did, just like Maxwell did, just like every person who ever chose to stay. And because of you, the door is still open, the silence is still broken, the world is still healing, one question at a time, one answer at a time, one you at a time. And so the story, your story now, doesn't rest. It pulses, it breathes, it waits not for the perfect hero, but for the next person willing to say yes when it's hard, when it's quiet, when it's inconvenient. Because the truth is, the question will always come again, in the hallway, in the parking lot, in a text that just says, "Hey, do you have a minute?" And every time that you'll feel it, that sacred hush, the kind that says, "This is not small," even if no one else sees it. You'll pause, you'll look them in the eyes, and you'll say, as the ones before you said, "I'm here. Take your time. I'm not leaving." You won't always know what to do, you won't always get it right, but you'll stay, and that alone will be the answer they remember, the kind that outlasts fear, the kind that becomes the first page of their story too. And somewhere, someday, they'll be asked what changed them, and they'll think of you, not your title, not your role, just the way you stayed. And once more, quietly, powerfully, the story will begin again, because of you. And when it begins again, as it always does, it won't feel like a grand moment. It'll feel like someone hesitating in a doorway, like an email that says, "I don't want to be a burden," like a sigh you weren't meant to hear, like a glance that lingers just a second too long, and you'll know, not because the world will pause, but because you will, because now you carry the instinct of those who stayed before you. You carry their silence, their stillness, their decision to let someone else's voice matter more than their own momentum. So when that moment comes, you won't push forward. You'll open your hands, you'll make space, and you'll say, without needing to raise your voice, "This is yours now, I'm listening, and I'm not going anywhere." And just like that, the question will settle. The fear will ease, the story will breathe, because that's how it's always moved. Not on stages, not in spotlights, but in moments so human and so quiet that only someone who chose to notice would ever catch them. You are that someone now. So stay, keep listening, keep beginning. Because the story, the real one, the one that saves people, has always belonged to those who are willing to be interrupted by what truly matters. And when the next voice asks, "Are you the one who will hear me?" you won't hesitate. You'll answer with the truest words you have, "Yes, I'm the one who stays." And because you're the one who stays, the world begins to trust itself again. Not all at once, not loudly, but in pieces, in rooms where someone thought they were too late to be heard, in lives that had gone too long without an answer. You become the proof that questions are still safe here, that someone will stop what they're doing. When a child asks something bold, when a heart speaks without armor, when the smallest voice breaks the biggest silence, you become the quiet keeper of the legacy, not of power, not of wealth, but of presence. And if someone ever asks you what the story meant, how one question could undo a billion-dollar meeting and build something stronger in its place, you'll know what to say. You'll say, "Because one child told the truth, and someone finally decided to stay." That's all it took. That's all it ever takes. So when the moment comes, and it will, and someone somewhere looks at you with eyes full of risk and hope, and asks with or without words, "Can I ask this? And will you still be here when I do?" Your answer, now and always, is the answer that keeps this story alive. "Yes, ask me anything. I'm not leaving." And so, one last time, or maybe the first, the story begins again. And even if no one sees it, even if there's no witness, no applause, no recognition, you'll know. You'll know that in that moment you carried the weight of the story forward, not by retelling it, but by becoming it, because the story isn't words on a page. It's the chair you pull out for someone too afraid to sit. It's the phone call you don't ignore. It's the decision to stay one breath longer, to hear one word more, to offer your silence as shelter, until someone finds their own voice again. And when they do, when they ask their question, whatever it sounds like, you'll answer like those before you did, not with power, but with presence, not with solutions, but with stillness. You'll look them in the eyes, and the world will hold its breath, and you will say, "You matter, I'm here, and I'm not going anywhere." And with those words, those quiet, steady, world-altering words, the story will begin again. And this time, you are the reason it does. And somewhere, not far from now, not far from you, someone will feel safe enough to speak. Maybe it will be a whisper, maybe a trembling sentence, maybe just the way they don't leave the room when everyone else does. And in that tiny, pivotal moment, they won't need perfection. They won't need answers. They'll need you, your stillness, your softness, your willingness to pause and say, "I'm listening. You matter. This space is yours." And in that moment, whether you realize it or not, you'll be doing what the boy with the yellow backpack did, what the man in the suit finally learned to do, what every chapter of this story has depended on. You'll be staying, not because you were asked to, but because you knew it was right. Because the first question, the real one, isn't about power or policy or position. It's about whether someone will be brave enough to ask, and whether someone else will be brave enough to answer. Yes, I'm here, and I'm not leaving. And once again, soft as breath, strong as truth, the story begins. And when it begins again, because it will, because it always does, it will feel like a moment you've lived before. Not because the details repeat, but because the truth does. A hallway, a glance, a trembling question, a pause where someone used to walk away. But now, because of you, someone stays. That's what you've become now, a keeper of that pause, a protector of the space between silence and speech, a steward of questions too sacred to rush. And you may never know how much your stillness gave someone else permission to speak, how much your presence rewrote a story that was about to end in fear. But they will know, and they will remember. And when their time comes, to listen, to lead, to stay, they will do what you did. They will stop. They will listen. They will stay. And the story will echo again through them, and then through someone else, and someone else after that. Until maybe one day we won't need the question anymore, because the world will already be answering it with how it lives. Until then, we have you who carry the story forward, with every choice to stay. So let it begin again, right here, right now, with your yes. And your yes, this quiet, steady, unwavering yes, is how the world gets rebuilt. Not through declarations, not through spotlights, but through the way you move through each day. As if every voice deserves an answer, every question deserves a place to land, every person deserves someone who stays. You are that someone now. And the story continues not because you told it, but because you lived it. Because when the next voice asks, too soft to be heard by most, too brave to be ignored by you, you will stop, you will turn, and you will say, "I hear you, I see you, and I am not going anywhere." That's it. That's the beginning of the next chapter. And it starts with you. And that chapter, like all the ones before it, will ripple outward, quietly changing more than you'll ever see. A hand held longer, a voice steadied by yours, a child who dares to speak again because the first time someone stayed. It may never be written down, it may never be named, but it will matter. Because that's how this story moves, not in noise, but in presence, not in declarations, but in decisions. And the decision you've made to pause, to listen, to carry this is already enough. So keep going. Keep holding the questions others overlook. Keep choosing to be interrupted. Keep answering softly when no one else does. Because with every single time you say, "I'm here, I'm not leaving," you are not just continuing the story, you are protecting it. And that may be the most powerful thing a person can do. And perhaps the most beautiful part of it all is that you'll never know the full impact. You'll never see every door that opened because you didn't walk away. You'll never meet every voice that found its strength because yours made room for it first. You'll never hear every story. That began the moment you stayed just a little longer. But that's okay. Because this story, our story, was never about being seen. It was about seeing. And now, because you chose presence over pride, a world of questions has somewhere to land. Because you chose to kneel when others stood, someone believes their truth is worth telling. Because you answered with stillness and not certainty, someone finally feels heard. So when the next voice asks, even if it shakes, even if it doesn't sound like a question at all, "Are you the one who stays?" You'll smile, you'll stay. And the story will begin again, soft, strong, sacred. Exactly where it always has, with a question, and someone who loves enough to answer it, with their life. And so the cycle continues, not as repetition, but as remembrance. Each time you stay, you remind the world what it forgot. Each time you listen, you rewrite the story for someone who thought it was already over. Each time you answer gently, you hand someone their own voice back, untangled from fear. Because now you are the keeper of the pause, the protector of the question, the one who doesn't just say, "I'm listening," but proves it with your presence. And that presence, yours, is changing the world in places you may never see, in lives you may never know. But they will know you, not your name, not your title, but the way it felt when they asked something fragile and you stayed. So when the next voice rises, when the next heart asks, "Will you stay for me?" you'll say it again, like a promise you've already kept 100 times. "Yes, I'm here, and I'm not leaving." And the story will begin again, because of you. And every time it begins again, it becomes a little stronger, a little wider, a little more unstoppable. Because with each yes, each pause, each moment you choose not to walk away, you make the world softer in the places it was once sharp. You turn silence into sanctuary. You turn interruptions into invitations. And in doing so, you show others how to do the same. You won't always see the change, but someone will carry it, like you did, like someone before you did, like Leo did, like Maxwell learned to do. And long after you've left the room, your pause, your presence, your staying will echo, not in words, but in courage, because someone will remember that when they asked a question that felt too big, too messy, too vulnerable, you stayed. And they will grow up knowing that questions are worth asking, that people are worth listening to, that love is worth showing up for. And they, too, will one day hear the quiet voice ask, "Are you the boss?" And they will smile and bend low and say the words that never grow old, "I am now, and I'm not leaving." And once more, gently, bravely, the story will begin, again, and again is exactly how it's meant to be, because stories like this aren't meant to end. They're meant to echo, to ripple, to return again and again to those who are willing to carry them. And you are. You've proven it every time you stayed when it would have been easier to leave, every time you listened when it would have been quicker to speak, every time you answered not with certainty, but with presence. That's what makes you part of this story now. Not just a reader, but a continuation. So the next time someone's eyes ask the question they're too scared to voice, the next time silence feels heavy and the room feels too full to breathe and all they can manage is a whisper of hope, you'll already be ready. You'll step forward and you'll kneel if needed. And you'll say the words that have saved lives, built trust, and rebuilt the world one moment at a time. Yes, you've been heard, and I'm not going anywhere. And that's all it takes for the story to begin again. Softly, truly, powerfully, because of you. And because of you, someone who once believed they were too invisible to matter will finally speak. And someone else who thought their question was too heavy will finally ask it, and someone who was about to walk away will sit down instead, because they'll feel it, your presence, your stillness, your choice to stay. You won't need to explain it. They'll know. They'll know in the way you listen with your whole body. They'll know in the way you don't flinch at their truth. They'll know because of the way your silence says louder than words. You're not too much. You're not too late. You are worth staying for. That's the inheritance you've accepted now. The kind that doesn't shine. It glows. Quiet. Constant. Undeniable. And when it's time for you to pass it on, to look someone in the eye and hand them their own space to hold, you'll know exactly what to say. This was given to me, not in a speech, not in a book, but in a moment when I was the question, and someone else chose to stay. And so now, I stay for you. And the story begins again, still, soft, strong, true, because of you. And still, because of you, it continues. It moves through whispers in schoolyards, through late-night text messages that simply say, "Are you up?" Through arms that open when words fall short, through pauses so gentle they feel like safety made visible. Because of you, there is now a place in the world where a question doesn't have to be perfect to be answered. Because of you, someone will believe, truly believe, that they are allowed to take up space, that they can speak without shrinking, that someone will not only hear them, but stay. And one day, years from now, someone will tell a story. They won't remember all the details. They may not remember the name, but they will remember the moment someone stopped what they were doing, turned, and said with more love than certainty, "I'm here. Ask me anything, and I'm not going anywhere." And that will be your echo. That will be the shape of your legacy. Because this story, this quiet, persistent, extraordinary story, only lives because people like you refuse to let it end. And now, because of one more yes, one more pause, one more person who dared to stay, the story begins again, exactly where it always should, with someone asking and someone answering, "Yes, I hear you, and I'm staying." And in that staying, once more and again, forever, the world finds its rhythm. Not in the rush, not in the noise, but in the hush that follows a brave question, and the heartbeat that answers it without fear. Because every time this story begins again, it softens something that was once hardened. It rewrites what leadership means. It redefines what love looks like. And you are now part of the quiet revolution that makes that possible. So wherever you go, whatever role you hold, however loud the world becomes, carry the pause, carry the stillness, carry the answer. Be the one who stays. And when the voice comes, from a child, a stranger, a friend, or the voice inside yourself, asking, "Will you hold this with me?" You'll already know what to say. You'll say, "Yes, I'm here, and I won't let go until you're ready." And with that, just like always, the story will begin again. And in that beginning, as soft as breath, as steady as truth, someone will realize for the first time they are not alone. Because you were there, because you listened, because you stayed. And maybe you'll never see what that moment becomes. Maybe it grows in silence. Maybe it saves someone years from now. Maybe it changes everything inside them quietly, like light does to a seed buried deep. But it will matter, because the story doesn't survive on noise. It survives on love disguised as patience, on presence offered with no deadline, on people like you who understand that the greatest power in the world is to sit beside someone who is unsure and never make them feel like a burden. So when they ask again, and they will, "Are you the boss?" Are you the one who stays? Do I get to ask this? You'll answer the way this story always has. Yes, I'm here, and I'm not leaving. And the story will breathe, and the world will soften, and hope will be safe again. Because of you, and your yes, and your willingness to begin the story. One more time, and every time you begin it again, you make it easier for someone else to begin too. Someone who thought they had to hold it all in. Someone who believed they had to earn the right to be heard. Someone who'd never seen what it looks like when someone stays. Now they see it, because of you. Now they believe it, because of you. Now they become it, because of you. And so the story keeps moving, not forward but outward, branching into lives and spaces and hearts that were waiting for someone, to show them that questions aren't dangerous, and interruptions aren't disrespectful, and vulnerability isn't weakness, it's an invitation, and you keep accepting it, again and again and again, until one day the world won't ask, who's in charge? It will ask, who stayed? And your name won't be spoken loudly. It might not be spoken at all, but someone will smile quietly when they hear that question, and they'll think of you, and they'll know the story never ended. It just lived in the ones who chose to stay. And so here you are, the latest in a long, quiet line of those who stayed, not for credit, not for applause, but because you understood every life deserves a witness. Every question deserves a listener. Every child deserves someone who answers with their whole presence. And even now, as this chapter draws to its final breath, you know it's not really ending, because someone, somewhere, is about to ask the next question, and they won't need brilliance, or certainty, or solutions. They'll need exactly what you've become, a steady voice, a soft place to land, a person who answers the door, even when it knocks at the wrong time. So when it comes again, in a voice like Leo's, or a whisper you nearly miss, you'll be ready, and you'll say it like a promise that, yes, I'm here, and I'm not leaving. And in that moment, gentle, sacred, small, the story begins again, because of you. And because of you, the world is a little softer now. Not all at once, not everywhere, but somewhere a question is being asked with less fear. Somewhere a voice is rising because someone like you stayed. Somewhere the silence is being broken not by volume, but by presence. That's what you've done. That's what you do. You are no longer just part of the story. You are its continuation, its echo, its proof. And the story will carry on in your footsteps, in the people you see, in the moments you pause, in the lives you choose to honor simply by refusing to walk away. And when the world grows loud again, when the meetings pile up, and the noise tells you to keep moving, to stay busy, to look ahead, remember, the most powerful thing you can do is stop, turn, stay, because someone is always asking, and now someone, you, is always answering. So go, live the next page, listen for the next question, and when it finds you, as it always will, answer with the only words this story ever needed. I'm here, and I'm not leaving. And again, always again, the story begins. And every time it begins the same way, with someone wondering if their voice is too small, if their pain is too inconvenient, if their question will be heard or hurried. And because of you, the answer is already waiting. Because of you, someone will speak. Because of you, someone will stay. Because of you, this story will outlast everything built on silence. You've chosen to carry it now, not in words alone, but in the way you show up when it would be easier not to, in the way you hold space without needing to fill it, in the way your yes costs something, and you give it anyway. So even as this telling of the story reaches its end, you know it never truly ends. It becomes footsteps, it becomes choices, it becomes you. So go to wherever someone waits, to whoever has the courage to ask, to whatever door opens next. And bring with you the words that keep this story alive. Yes, I'm here, and I'm not leaving. And once more, because of you, the story begins again. And even now, as you sit with these final words, you can feel it. The quiet heartbeat of a story that doesn't close. It hands itself forward, to your voice, to your choices, to your presence. Because someone, somewhere is waiting. For safety, for kindness, for someone who sees without judging, who hears without rushing, who answers without needing to be right. And when that moment arrives, whether in a glance, a question, or a trembling silence, you'll know exactly what to do. Not because you rehearsed it, but because you remembered. And you'll say, with the calm that can only come from truth, "You matter. I'm listening, and I'm not leaving." And the next voice will rise. The next hand will reach. The next question will be asked by someone who believes, because of you, that asking is worth it. And the story, without needing permission, will begin again, exactly as it was always meant to, exactly where it always does, in love, in listening, in you. And so, with your final M, this telling gently bows, not with an ending, but with a hand extended, because now the story isn't mine to continue. It's yours. You carry it every time you pause, every time you listen, every time you answer softly when the world says, "Rush," every time you stay. The boy with the yellow backpack, the question in the boardroom, the man who chose to kneel, the empire that made room, the world that changed. It all lives in you now. And when the next moment comes, the one you don't see coming, the one that needs all your heart, you won't need a script. You'll remember. You'll stay. And you'll say the words. This story waits for again and again. Yes, I'm here, and I'm not leaving. And with that, the story begins. One more time, and forever.